Recording. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. I've been thoroughly enjoying going through your materials. They're looking pretty good. It looks like some of you had some fun with it, so I'm excited about that. I'm going to actually kind of just go through the whole module today so that we make sure that we don't miss anything. Let's start with the instructions for today. So this week I will be reviewing and grading your materials assignments and catching up with the garden levels afterwards, which I've already almost done with. I will be going over assignments and give a lecture on the nature of designing games. That's going to be fun. Then I will give a demo on lighting, skyboxes, and fog in Unity. Very nice, very fun. And today's call is going to be recorded. I don't have anybody's visuals on this recording because I'm not doing it through Zoom. Zoom will sometimes record you talking, but it will record your audio. And you know what I need to make sure I'm doing before I move on is I get the chat. I got chat up. Yes, it's up and it doesn't look like I missed anything. So, whew, all right. All right. I'm going to post it on YouTube later. If you're interested in following along, please join. That's why you guys are here. And we're going to go over lighting, atmosphere, and the player arc today. Actually, it's going to be this thing you're going to do over the week. But we got a lot of ground to cover today because before today, I've basically been kind of showing you the tool, right? It's like, this is the hammer, this is the nail, this is the button you got to push to hammer the nail, and then it makes the thing you want, right? But game design is not simply hitting the right buttons and knowing how to make a thing, because there's not a right or wrong way to make a lot of stuff other than just a right or wrong way maybe to interact with an engine. So Unity in this case is our tool for a place to make a fun playable experience. So how many folks here? You guys, there's only a few of you here. But is anybody here actually interested in game design? Or are you interested in being an artist in games? And can you tell me the difference? Hype squad. I'm interested in both. That is a fair statement. So, the artist is usually tasked with creating aesthetics for the game. Now, you're probably familiar with a concept artist who is going to decide the aesthetic of the game, sort of, with the direction of an art director. Now, once that has been established, which is usually kind of a work in progress, it isn't just done right away, it does kind of evolve and change as we have other artists working on it, but they have to pull from reference. And that reference is usually an art bible created by the upper level art team, from the director and the concept artist and leads and etc. So, moving on. The game designer, we're not game artists, but we do use art, and it is important that we understand it. So, we're going to find a way to use some of the things that we understand in the hammer and the nail of using Unity, and starting to implement some of our art knowledge with our design knowledge. Now, everybody here has gone through DMA 225 or 140, where we've created prototypes, and we understand that we're tasked with creating experiences for our players, play testing those experiences, and thinking very critically about what they're experiencing, what they're feeling, and what we want them to do, right? Okay, so can you tell me, I would like to hear from you, what is design to you? How do you define design? Give you guys a sec. Nobody want to go? The decision making pertaining to the creation of a level. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah. And the objects therein. Yeah, that's pretty good. It is a decision making process. It is a process. It's not a task. It's not, you can't write on a to-do list, design level, check. But rather a series of decisions that you make and problems that you solve. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what design is and how it affects us in our world. And we're going to start thinking about our world as designers moving forward. And I mean, if you're interested in game design or even game art, you have to at least begin to try to scratch the surface of design as well. So this is good for you too if you want to be an artist. Okay, so even though design has existed since before recorded history, design as an industry is still pretty new, right? So we are figuring out how to train in design in more recent years as technology has become since the Industrial Revolution, frankly. And we've always been designing, right? Since people have been people, we've figured out that we have problems and we need to solve them. So what is design? Now, all artificial things have been through a design process. Everything. So from the chairs that you're sitting in, to the placement of those chairs, to the shape and location of the room that you're sitting in, and the location within campus or city or state or home, wherever, everything was decided by a group of people at some point in time. Every level made choices to create the experience and everything artificial that we interact with. So, let's keep going before I sidetrack. It's literally in everything, and what has been created by other people. Someone or a group of people were involved in the decisions or purpose, utility, aesthetic, and cultural side of that object. I mean, and in this case, a shoe can say a lot from the decisions that were made. And first off, it's really sporty. I can even imagine almost the type of person who would wear it. Its purpose, it had a goal, and it was designed to meet that goal. I actually kind of like that shoe. All right. Now, not all things that are designed are physical objects or tangible, right? Which is something that you can touch or tactile. Governments, rules, companies, this lecture was all designed with a purpose in mind, right? Okay. One of my favorites of formal rules that don't have a tactile or tangible thing is Robert's Rules of Order. Anybody familiar with this? I'm gonna guess maybe? Nope. Okay. Yep. Fair. So Robert's Rules of Order are rules of which that you're allowed to engage in conversation, usually in legislation, or in the United States, we definitely do it. I would like to propose that we move forward on this topic. Everybody say aye who agree, and then people say aye. If you disagree, say nay. Nay. Those who abstain, well, let the record show that 4 people said aye, 2 people said nay, and 8 people said they'll abstain. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda. That is Robert's Rules of Order. It's designed to help folks stay on topic and stay on course to try to get productivity out of meetings, right? Now, I personally hate them, but they have a place and they have a purpose, and they're actually kind of interesting. It's like parliamentary procedures, right? But it was a design that was created. Now that's a formal rule, what you say, what you do. These are accepted when you go on almost as a contract. Hey, we're going to have a meeting, we're going to have these rules. Formal rule. Then there are informal rules. And these ones are a little bit tricky because before we were designers, we probably thought that these were just the natural order or the way things are. Because culturally, we sort of start to lean into things representing symbols and colors, giving meaning and giving other order. So informal rules are the idea that blue represents boy and pink represents girl and genders for babies. What was really interesting about that was that it was actually reversed at the turn of the century, or a little before that, most of the time children were only wearing, or babies specifically, were only wearing whites, off-whites, and cream colors because when they soiled themselves, we didn't have diapers. They had like fabrics, swaddling cloths that they were wrapped in. And this way parents can see if they were like soiled. So it always needed to be a light color. Well, it wasn't until later that ladies' magazines or fashion started to come out with like blues and pinks, and everybody kind of started leaning towards pink meaning boy, blue meaning girl, and then like a mommy blogger of, what was I going to say, like the 1940s, wrote something and gave it meaning, and then everybody switched on that. It was an article in like a women's magazine, but basically it's like what bloggers are now from back then. So we just kind of over time accepted that this was a natural order of things, but it was an informal rule. It's not technically a rule at all, but you know, we kind of go with it. And you'll find that some people have pushback on that, and I'd say actually rightfully so. So, what do we do? What does that mean about game design though? Like, why do I have to understand these things? Well, we are crafting experiences after all. So, dress babies in green. I like that. I actually really like yellow, which is, I think, fine to dress the baby in, but it wouldn't have made sense at the turn of the century when they were soiling themselves. But I think yellow is a really happy color. Your child is a lizard. Congrats. Exactly. Okay. So we understand that games are merging of all formal elements, design fundamentals sneak up literally every point that we're in this creating experience. So from mechanics, aesthetics, story, and technology, the rules of design fall in each of these categories. Design is not a separate thing outside of it, while it is also that. It exists in literally every one of these sects, right? Okay, so something to keep in mind though, which you can only expound upon. Your own experiences is what you're bringing to the table, which is why I really like having this design talk. I can't imagine anybody going into game design without thinking about design and what it means at all, because all you can bring to the table is your world experiences. So I have to expose you to it if you haven't been already. Now, there's a world, then there's your world. This is like what we like to call a bubble. There's a common problem in game development. Inside your world is an even smaller world where games lives in. So here's what I want you to keep in mind. I don't want you to pull all of your experiences from this little bubble. I want you to pull it from this bubble here as you try to make it as big as you can. See as much of the world as you can. Now, I don't mean literally travel the world, though that is dope if you can do that, but I mean to think about it outside of just simply your own experiences. Okay, so the sooner we start seeing design in everything, the sooner we can start to deconstruct it and understand where it works and where it doesn't. I really love this picture. It's kind of a famous picture. It's an abstract piece about design, and it's intended to make you think about something we call agency, or, I'm sorry, affordances. All right, so let's move on. Fundamentals of design in multiple industries. What kind of design work should I do? I just provided you with this graphic because I think it's really cool, and I want you to make a little note that it's on page 15 because I'm providing you with this lecture that you can check this out later. It's an interesting kind of mind map, but in its own way was a design itself. Created to help you figure out what kind of design you'd like to do. All right. Industrial design, the professional service of creating and developing concepts and specifications that optimize the function, value, appearance of products and systems for the mutual benefit of both user and manufacturer. Cool. Why do I care about this? See, if you can scratch the surface of industrial design and some of the processes therein, this is where you can start thinking about how technology, products are made and used, and it can help you sort of approach how you design for even art of the world that you're trying to create. So, concept artists exist in this industry too. It's just that a lot of their concepts try to remain a little bit more grounded. Even though I've seen some car concepts that will never turn into a real car design, they're still actually pretty cool, right? But it helps you think about the nuts and bolts and the process in which you design for someone to experience a product. Now, that does matter and transition into game development later on when you start to create a world that doesn't actually exist, because these are some of the things that we have to design for. Okay. Granted, they don't actually have to function. We can just write some scripts and then it works. Okay. Interaction design. The focus is upon how people interact with technology. The goal is to enhance people's understanding of what can be done, what is happening, and what it just occurred. Interaction design draws upon principles of psychology, design, art, and emotion to ensure a positive and enjoyable experience. This is UI and UX and interface design. So in games, we call it game UI or GUI, which are the buttons and interface within like the heads-up display or the HUD, or how you interact with the game. But beyond just that, juice, screen shake, how you interpret the environment, all of these things are part of interaction design. But conceptually, it's an entirely different ballgame in games, while the fundamentals and the principles of interaction design also exist within game design. This is one of the things I love and also hate about game design, is that it's so big in its concept, we have almost a very hard time like pinpointing what it is that you want to do within it. Sort of like somebody saying, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be in games. Well, what do you want to do in games when you grow up? Oh, shoot, it's like the same question. Okay. Next. This is maybe my favorite. Experience design. The practice of designing products, processes, service events, and environments with a focus placed on the quality of it and enjoyment of the total experience. These are really fun because these are like wedding planners, playgrounds, laser tag arenas, concert halls, and then this starts to trickle in and fall into interior design, architecture, I think also landscape architecture. So now it's about what we do with the space and the activities that you plan within them to create an experience, right? Duality of man. Okay, all right, so while I'm not saying, hey, oh my God, we have to understand all of this if you're going to be a game designer. No, that's not true. But you should be aware of all of it if you want to be a game designer. Sometimes just knowing what your strengths are and being able to offload your weaknesses to those who are stronger in those areas, excellent. You're not going to have to do or be able to do everything. But hopefully this does give you a little bit of vocabulary on where you can start doing research where it's necessary. Okay, so anybody, I'm going to actually skip this. What makes bad design? I kind of want you to like interact with this. No, seriously, basically. The funny thing about designers is that we love to talk all day about failed design. Failed design is the only thing that can help us sort of pinpoint what good design is. Okay. Designs that are super unoriginal. I disagree. I disagree fundamentally. I don't believe that good design always has to be original or groundbreaking, because if that were the case, you'd be required to reinvent the wheel every time. So it's basically the lack of good design. Ooh, I don't mean. Okay, Paige, go on, please. I want you to speak. To be completely original and reinvent the wheel, but if you have Okay. Okay, so designs that are super original. I don't mean to completely to be completely original and reinvent the wheel, but if you have to design 20 characters and all of them are essentially identical with inverted color, I don't think that it presents good design. Okay, possibly. Honestly, I'd have to have a lot more context before I could make for sure, but I think what you're kind of trying to do. You are trying to establish like rules for yourself in this way, and we call that philosophy, your design philosophy. That's good. So you're right that it's very unlikely that they are good design if they are all very similar to each other and you can't differentiate between the others. So if you're trying to design a character, first you have to have a goal of what that character is supposed to be. If you're designing NPCs, you don't want them to stand out, because if they did, you'd be distracted by them as a player, right? So first you have to figure out what the goal is. But I do like what you mean by having a good design for a character. You're thinking it needs to be set apart. Something has to be set aside from it. But first you have to determine what makes poor design before you can start to shape it into something better. There's no checklist of good design beyond it doesn't pull the user out of the experience. So did you know that, has this ever happened to you where you pull on a door and you need to push it? I know the answer is yes. I know it is. This is called the Norman door. All right? I want you to think about for a second what the purpose of a door is. Okay? We're designers now. And for this thought experiment, I am tasking you with the job of designing an experience of a door to either open or close. All right? Okay. So somebody presented this, all right? This was the solution. What would you do if you made this thing, gave it these handles, and you tested it, and you saw that people were pulling when you intended them to push, right? What would you do? How would you solve this problem? I want to hear from both y'all. You could install ambidirectional hinges and make a pull push. Yes, you could. You absolutely could. You can make it so that it can open both ways. That's one thing you can do. Or if you wanted to reduce floor space, your door takes up, you rip the door out, make a slider, you put in one of those sliding doors. Yeah. You could change the handle design. That's a really good solution also. Like, how would you change the handle design, Newton? Maybe make it like those flat metal pieces on school doors where you just like remove the handle and put like a flat plate there instead, because if there's nothing to grab, what does your hand do? Pushes it. Yeah. Right? Right? Frankly, what an elegant solution. I also like Paige's solution also, like maybe putting in a sliding door. You're thinking a lot more grandiose of those approaches, but that's fine too. But it also kind of depends on what the purpose of the door. If it needs to lock from one side, the directional hinge won't work. It's actually, it kind of hurt your cause. But if you need it to slide from one door, what if you need to be able to lock it from either side? That can become a problem. But you know, whatever. These are all better solutions than doing what other Norman doors do. Okay. Norman doors. Were the design of a thing that you can only do like two things with, and that's push or pull. The design is so bad that they have to write directions on the door. This is where design fails. That's what makes these the Norman doors. This is a perfect example. Show us the pics. These are pics. This right here. This is some bullshit. This is a Norman door. There's a whole series on Norman doors. All I see is instructions for the week. Oh, really? It doesn't show you? Okay, alright, I'm sorry. That's weird. So, I guess when I shared, it was only sharing the web page, not the screen. Okay, fine. We'll do this. Alright, here. Look at this. Look at these. Doors that have to give you written instructions. Do you have any idea how ridiculously stupid that is? You believe that? I was kind of blown away, honestly, that designers were more drawn to aesthetics, like these fancy handles and the symmetry and all of that, but wouldn't put into like thought the affordances that the handles give you. When you see a handle, you instinctively want to pull it. That's what you want to do with it. You want to pull the thing. When you see a plate, you want to push it. You can even kind of design different shapes of handles if you want to kind of get creative with it. And I'm not saying that having a handle is a bad design choice, but my goodness, like at what point have you lost your way as a designer? So this is why I really like discussing Norman doors, because they're kind of ridiculous. So, like, actually, just to be clear, when I was going through my lecture, did you not even see any of this, and all you saw was the was the assignment still? Yes, there were lecture slides, guys. Guys, I had lecture slides. Okay, well, for what it's worth, it's being recorded, so you have access to it. No wonder you guys had crickets. God, I hate Zoom sometimes. Okay. All right. The one on the left has a push door and a pull door right next to each other. Why? Exactly. Okay. Oh dear. Okay, so I'm really glad that you guys can see the visuals now, because bad design is when design goals fail. You can't design anything without a goal. You have to know fully what your plan, what your end game is before you can create a plan of attack, right? Take a look at these for a second. Glass doors for bathroom stalls? Are you kidding me? Look at this. Look at this whole ditch for the slide. Like, and I mean the aesthetic choice of this over here. Look at this. Bad design is when design goals fail. Okay. I'll give you guys a second to marinate on this for a second. Okay. I'm crying at the glass doors, right? What, this screams safety, doesn't it? Why even dig the ditch at all? Like, why is it there at all? Is to catch the baby with concrete. Okay, my eyes cross when I look at this. It's hideous. And, I mean, people can't see the steps. It just literally makes everything unsafe, right? Okay. Okay, so let's actually talk about some of the more foundational aspects of design and how we approach it. When a design fails, it is lacking discoverability or understanding, or both, okay? Either or both. Discoverability, it answers the question, is it possible to even figure out what the actions are, or is it possible to even figure out what actions are possible and where and how I can perform them? Like the handle on the door, meaning can I figure it out? Understanding, what does it mean? How is the product supposed to be used? And what do all the different controls, settings, mechanics, levels, etc. mean? All right? Discoverability. Can I figure out how to use it? And do I understand why it was designed? Okay, so let's look at these again. The toilets, the glass doors. What is it lacking? This one here. Understanding or discoverability. Intelligence and human decency. It's lacking understanding. The designer does not understand the needs of the person using this. I get how to use it, but why would I? What is the point of this? When you ask yourself that. Okay, let's go into the slide here. Is it missing discoverability or understanding? It does not have understanding. That's true. It's also lacking discoverability in the sense that the slide is well designed, but when you land, how are you supposed to land here? So you'd have to try it, probably fail. It doesn't really show me how to engage with this space well. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to jump? Am I supposed to hit myself? What? Well, first off, it lacks both. Like, the presence of this ditch altogether doesn't need to be there whatsoever. If it was put there at all, I imagine to catch water? I don't know. I don't even understand why it was there to begin with. But if I were to try to use it, I would discover I can't use it, or can't use it effectively, right? Probably because of the location of it. All right, one more time. This one here on the right, the stairs. Is it lacking discoverability or understanding? Yes. In this case, it's lacking discoverability. The choice of aesthetic design on these stairs make it more difficult for me to locate the steps. And therefore, I can't discover where the steps are and how to engage with the steps. So good design needs to make sure it has discoverability and understanding, or else it's pointless. All right. Okay. So, good design characteristics. Primarily, discoverability, understanding. Secondary, fun, intuitive, and enjoyable. Now, as gamers, not designers, gamers, we tend to think fun, intuitive, and enjoyable are primary. But that's only because discoverability and understanding, when done well, is completely invisible. The only time design fails us is when we are pulled out of the experience. So think about for a second your chairs you're sitting in right now. Okay? Or wherever you're sitting. I'm assuming you're sitting in a chair. Right? When you sat in that chair, either your kitchen table or whatever, assuming that it was fine, did you say, my goodness, this chair feels so good on my ass. Wow, I cannot believe the perfect height it is when I sit in it. My knees are at a right angle. I don't have to lean back too far. Man, whoever designed this chair, mwah, hats off to them. They nailed it. This is good design. Hell yeah. No, that probably didn't happen. What you did was you sat down and you said, okay, what do I need to do? All right, probably should open Canvas. Where's the link she sent me? Now, if you sat down in your chair and it was too low, or too high, or leaned back too far, or jumbled a little bit, or squeaked, you would have said, wow, this chair sucks. What a piece of shit. Right? Good design, when done really well, is an unsung hero. You don't even realize it's happening to you. So now, with the tasks that will be presented to you coming up in the next homework assignment, you're going to start thinking about discoverability and understanding so that your players know where they're supposed to go and know what they're supposed to do. And then you're going to think fun, intuitive, and enjoyable experiences. Okay. All right. Step 1, know your goals. Without a goal, you can't know where to begin and even how to start your assignment. And don't worry, I've got some parameters for you, and we're going to go over them. Affordances and signifiers. Yeah! Now we're going to go into some more design talk, and this is going to be related to games, and you guys are going to play the same quiz game. You're going to love it. I'm actually really excited about this. Now, affordances. I know I can do something with it. When you see a button, you push it. You see a handle, you pull it. You see a plate, you push it. You see a knob, you twist it. You see a slidey, you slide it. You see a switch, you flip it. Affordances. When you see a ladder, climb it. Right? This is what affordances look like. None of these have written instructions, and we know what to do with them. We just kind of know. We'll do it. That's what an affordance is. Signifiers. I know what I can do with it because there's signage, kind of. All right? Affordances is what we want to use primarily, and when our affordances fail us, we start to go into signifiers. All right. Okay, games. What does this have to do with games? But games, though. All right. When we're creating environments, we are establishing something we call a visual language. We are creating metrics, and we're creating vocabulary using visuals, just like you do with affordances. You see a button, you push it. Green probably means good, and red probably means bad, right? So in this particular image, I really love it. This is from... this is Nathan Drake. This is Uncharted. Uncharted 4, I think. One of the newer ones. At the top, if you've ever played this game, you see it, and what you're doing is you're just starting to strategize. You're like, I'm a player. I know there's some bad guys up there, so I'm going to hide over here. I know how to hide in the grass, so I'm probably thinking I'll hop from here to here, and I'll just like sneak up and stealth this first dude, and then I'm going to go over here, and then I'm going to come around and see if I can stealth another one. I'm going to try to stealth kill as many of them as I can, because when they know that I'm here, they all swarm me, right? As a player, you're not thinking, wow, what well-designed work. I know exactly where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do. Completely eludes them. What you don't know is that there was always vocabulary being established to here. And in this case, using soft rounded shapes to signify safety, flattened, more angular shapes to signify utility, meaning you can use these objects, likely climb them, and using sharper, pointed shapes to point towards danger, right? I love this example because it tells us so much about how much work went into just creating that sense of, I know exactly what to do for our players. So you're going to start creating a visual vocabulary. All right. Signifiers, affordances. How do we do that and respect the player, right? How do I give them these tools without having to spell it out for them? Because I can't, you know how freaking, like, annoying it is to have it spelled out to you, right? Okay. All right, so types of affordances in games that you need to be aware of. Explicit, defined, cultural, and inferred. Explicit, defined, cultural, and inferred. Explicit. Explicit affordances are those pointed out to the player, and it typically breaks realism, such as an ammo pickup arrow that glows. In the case of Uncharted, you've got the little grappling hook icon pointing to where you're supposed to shoot it, right? A UI button prompt on a switch, a throw rope here. These are called explicit affordances. You are telling me what I need to do through a kind of visual interaction, usually like an animation or a button or something like that, right? Okay. Defined. Defined affordances are when the game goes to length to associate arbitrary visuals within game mechanics, like making all climbable handholds painted yellow, or in Mirror's Edge when you know you need to go that way because it's red, because it's painted red, because reasons, right? Now, there's no reason that contractors and designers of this city would have decided to paint this thing red. It's red for the player. And this too tends to break from immersion, right? These things glowing bright red go this way, or all handholds are yellow because reasons. But at least it's not a arrow pointing that way sign, or an icon dropping down up and down in a world that doesn't totally exist at all, or in a world that exists for you in your mind, but you've got this arrow hopping up and down which would never exist, right? So defined affordances are just arbitrary values that we give the player because we just don't want to use a sign. Not bad. This is not a bad solution, but it still breaks immersion, right? Okay. Yeah, actually, I just told you what it does. What's the problem with explicit and defined? It breaks you out of the experience. Sometimes not badly. You just accept it and move on. I mean, like Uncharted and Mirror's Edge, these are great games, and you can really get immersed in them. So just because you do them doesn't mean that, like, you're a bad designer, right? It's just that you can't have everything been done through explicit and defined affordances. All right. All right, let's talk about the other two. Cultural affordances. Cultural affordances are those we recognize from our real world and other game experience, like a ladder, an unlit torch, a padlock, a valve, a pipe, something that you know that, like, you can open. A door. You open doors, right? This one's a little tricky because when we're talking about cultural affordances, we're usually talking about Western culture. Fire doesn't necessarily mean the same thing everywhere, but it usually means warmth, right? A padlock or a valve, they might look very differently from one country to another. So just remember that when you are designing some of these things, using more universal signifiers for affordances, right? Let's see here. A ladder is a good one. I wouldn't put a ladder in your game unless your player can climb it. Do you remember what it feels like to walk up to a ladder? You're like, ooh, and then you can't use it. Aren't you a little like, that's stupid. Like, why use a ladder at all then, right? So cultural affordances already have meaning, and we're using what culturally we've established those meanings are for, and they work pretty well. All right. My favorite affordance, inferred affordances. Inferred affordances are those players can deduct based on their knowledge of the game's rules and systems. So I already know what I can do here. Not because there's an arrow pointing to me. Well, technically there's an arrow, but that means something else. Ignore that. I know I can squash these guys. I know that these guys I can hit. I know that this I can climb. I know that I can squash that guy. I know that that guy's gonna fucking kill me. So what I'm doing here as a player is I'm panning out like my plan of action. Completely. Platforms are for landing on. This is going to give me something. These guys are easier to kill than that guy, so I can just like... Whoo, 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 whoo. Now, when you first start playing Super Mario World, they don't just throw all this at you and you just figure it out. They ease you into it. You start off by being introduced to a Goomba, and then a Koopa, or a Koopa Troopa. They introduce these things to you one at a time, and you create meaning with those. Excuse me, tickling my throat. Okay. So, okay. I am going to end this talk with a video, but first, I want to go back to the types of affordances. Explicit, defined, cultural, and inferred. The easiest is explicit, going to slightly more difficult, to the hardest, which is inferred. Cultural and inferred don't pull you out of the experience, whereas explicit and defined kind of remind you that you are playing a video game. But if you can explain to your character, your player, that you don't have to point a big fat arrow at it, you don't have to make it painted red to show them where to go, like when it affords you to, you can show them just through some pretty basic vocabulary and actions. What things already have meaning, right? And actions. These are the things that help you stay completely immersed in the game. But then, so does choice, but that's another conversation for another time. Okay. So, this is one of my favorite videos. I'm going to link it to Canvas. I'm going to recommend that you watch it. It's one of my favorites. But I will also be giving you this talk. All right. So how are you all holding up? Doing okay? Okay. I'm going to stop the recording there for that half.